What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't your job, your background, your education, or your circumstances? What if the real obstacle is the story you've been telling yourself for years? Most people believe they're limited by external factors. They think success belongs to people who are more talented, more intelligent, or luckier than they are. But David Goggins discovered something that completely changed his life. He realized that the mind creates limits long before the body reaches them. Before David Goggins became a Navy SEAL, an ultramarathon runner, and one of the toughest men alive, he was living a completely different life. He was overweight, insecure, and trapped in a cycle of excuses. Every day felt the same. He had dreams, but deep down he didn't believe he could achieve them. Like many people, he accepted the version of himself that life had given him instead of creating the version he truly wanted to become. The truth is that most people never come close to reaching their full potential. They stop the moment things become uncomfortable. They quit when progress feels slow. They avoid challenges because failure feels painful. Over time, comfort becomes a habit, and that habit slowly steals their future. Think about your own life for a moment. How many goals have you postponed because you didn't feel ready? How many opportunities have you ignored because you were afraid of failing? How many times have you convinced yourself that tomorrow would be a better day to start? The problem isn't that people don't want success. The problem is that success requires discomfort, and discomfort is something most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. David Goggins learned this lesson early. His childhood was filled with challenges, fear, and uncertainty. Many people would have used those experiences as an excuse to give up on life. Instead, those struggles eventually became the fuel that pushed him forward. One of the most powerful ideas in this book is that your past doesn't define your future. Your past explains where you've been, but it doesn't decide where you're going. Too many people allow old failures to control new opportunities. They assume that because something didn't work before, it will never work at all. But every successful person has failed. Every successful person has been rejected. Every successful person has faced moments when quitting seemed easier than continuing. The difference is that they kept moving forward anyway. David Goggins believes that growth begins the moment you stop running from hard things. Every challenge you avoid makes you weaker. Every challenge you face makes you stronger. Confidence isn't built by thinking positive thoughts all day. Confidence is built by keeping promises to yourself, especially when you don't feel like it. Imagine waking up early when you'd rather stay in bed. Imagine working on your goals when everyone else is distracted. Imagine staying disciplined when nobody is watching. Those small actions may not seem important in the moment, but over time they completely change who you become. Most people wait until they feel motivated before taking action. Goggins teaches the opposite approach. He believes action creates motivation. Once you start moving, your energy grows. Once you start making progress, your confidence increases. Waiting to feel ready is one of the biggest mistakes people make because readiness rarely comes before action. Another lesson from this book is that excuses are dangerous because they sound reasonable. It's easy to blame a lack of time, a lack of money, or difficult circumstances. While those challenges may be real, they don't change the fact that excuses keep you stuck. The moment you stop looking for reasons why something can't be done, you start finding ways to make it happen. This doesn't mean life is easy. It doesn't mean success happens overnight. It simply means that responsibility gives you power. When you take ownership of your choices, you gain control over your future. David Goggins often says that the human mind quits long before the body does. Most people never discover how strong they really are because they stop the moment things become difficult. They mistake discomfort for danger. They assume that struggle means they're failing when, in reality, struggle is often proof that they're growing. Think about any skill you've ever learned. At first, it felt difficult. You made mistakes. Progress was slow. But if you stayed consistent, eventually it became easier. The same principle applies to every area of life. Success isn't about being perfect. It's about continuing long enough to improve. One day, David Goggins looked at his life and realized something had to change. Nobody was coming to save him. Nobody was going to magically transform his future. If his life was going to improve, he would have to become the person capable of creating that improvement. That realization changed everything. Because the moment you stop waiting for rescue and start taking responsibility, your transformation begins. The accountability mirror. At some point in life, everyone reaches a moment when they have to make a choice. They can continue living with excuses, or they can face the truth. Most people choose excuses because excuses are comfortable. The truth is often painful. David Goggins reached a point where he could no longer ignore reality. He looked at his life and saw a version of himself he wasn't proud of. He was overweight, unhappy, and far away from the person he wanted to become. For years, he had blamed circumstances, other people, and bad luck. But eventually he realized something important. None of those excuses were helping him move forward. That's when he created what he called the accountability mirror. The idea was simple. Every morning he would stand in front of a mirror and tell himself the truth. Not the comfortable version of the truth. The real truth. If he was out of shape, he admitted it. If he was being lazy, he admitted it. If he wasn't working hard enough, he admitted it. There was no hiding, no pretending, and no blaming anyone else. This practice sounds simple, but it's incredibly difficult. Most people spend their lives protecting their ego. They avoid criticism. They avoid uncomfortable conversations. They avoid looking at their weaknesses because weaknesses make them feel vulnerable. But according to Goggins, growth begins the moment you stop running from your flaws. Imagine wanting to improve your fitness while refusing to step on a scale. Imagine wanting to grow your YouTube channel while refusing to look at your analytics. Imagine wanting better results while refusing to examine your habits. Improvement becomes impossible when you're unwilling to face reality. The accountability mirror forced Goggins to confront reality every single day. It reminded him that his future depended on his actions, not his excuses. One reason people stay stuck is because they focus on what they cannot control. They complain about the economy, their background, their age, their competition, or their circumstances. While those factors may influence life, they don't determine everything. The only thing you truly control is your response. Goggins realized that every minute spent complaining was a minute that could have been spent improving. Every excuse delayed progress. Every distraction moved him further away from his goals. This mindset shift changed everything. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he started asking, "What can I do about it?" That question is powerful because it moves your attention from problems to solutions. Successful people aren't successful because they have fewer problems. They're successful because they spend more time solving problems than complaining about them. The accountability mirror also taught Goggins another important lesson. Small actions create massive changes over time. Many people think transformation happens overnight. They imagine one motivational speech, one lucky opportunity, or one big breakthrough changing their lives forever. But real transformation usually happens much more slowly. It happens when you improve a little every day. It happens when you keep promises to yourself. It happens when you stay consistent even when results aren't visible yet. Think about learning a new skill. You don't become an expert in a week. You improve through repetition. The same is true for confidence, discipline, and success. They are built through daily actions, not occasional bursts of motivation. This is why Goggins became obsessed with personal responsibility. He stopped waiting for perfect conditions. He stopped waiting to feel motivated. He stopped waiting for life to become easier. Instead, he focused on what he could do today. Not next month. Not next year. Today. Because every day matters. Every choice matters. Every habit matters. Most people underestimate the power of consistency. They look at successful people and assume success happened quickly. What they don't see are the years of effort behind the scenes. They don't see the sacrifices, the failures, or the moments when quitting would have been easier. Goggins understood that greatness is built one day at a time. One workout. One decision. One improvement. One promise kept. And that's why the accountability mirror became such a powerful tool. It eliminated self-deception. It forced him to stay honest about where he was and where he needed to go. Ask yourself this question. If you stood in front of a mirror right now and told yourself the complete truth, what would you say? Would you be proud of your habits? Would you be proud of your discipline? Would you be proud of how you're using your time? These questions aren't meant to make you feel bad. They're meant to help you grow. Because awareness always comes before improvement. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. And once Goggins started acknowledging the truth, something incredible happened. He began taking action. Not massive action. Not perfect action. Just consistent action. Day after day, he worked on becoming better than he was yesterday. Slowly, the person he saw in the mirror started changing. But his biggest lesson was still ahead. Because soon he would discover a principle that would completely transform the way he viewed pain, effort, and human potential. A principle known as the 40% rule. And according to David Goggins, understanding this rule could completely change the way you approach challenges for the rest of your life. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt completely exhausted? Maybe you were working on an important project, exercising, studying, or trying to achieve a goal. At some point, your mind started sending signals. Stop. You've done enough. You can finish tomorrow. Most people listen to that voice without questioning it. They assume that feeling tired means they've reached their limit. They assume that discomfort means it's time to quit. David Goggins discovered something very different. He realized that when most people think they're finished, they're nowhere near their actual limit. In fact, he believes that when your mind tells you to stop, you've often only used about 40% of your true capability. This idea became known as the 40% rule. The concept isn't about ignoring your health or pushing yourself into injury. It's about understanding that the mind is designed to protect you. Its primary goal is survival, not greatness. The moment things become uncomfortable, your brain starts looking for the fastest exit. That's why so many people quit too early. They mistake discomfort for danger. They confuse mental resistance with physical limitation. And because of that, they never discover what they're truly capable of. Think about a time when you almost gave up on something but kept going. Anyway. Maybe it was a difficult exam, a tough workout, or a challenging period in your life. At first, it felt impossible. Your energy was low, your confidence was gone, and quitting seemed like the easiest option. But somehow you continued. And once you pushed through that difficult moment, you realized you had much more strength than you thought. That's the 40% rule in action. The mind creates limits long before the body reaches them. This lesson applies to every area of life. A student wants to stop studying because they're tired. An entrepreneur wants to quit because results are slow. A creator wants to stop posting because views are low. An athlete wants to give up because training feels painful. In each situation, the mind offers an escape route. It says, take it easy. It says, maybe you're not good enough. It says, maybe this isn't for you. The problem is that if you always listen to that voice, you'll never know what's possible. David Goggins believes that growth happens when you learn to challenge those thoughts instead of automatically accepting them. The next time your mind tells you to stop, ask yourself a question. Am I truly at my limit, or am I simply uncomfortable? Most of the time, the answer is discomfort. And discomfort is where growth lives. One reason people struggle with discipline is because they expect success to feel good all the time. They believe that motivated people wake up excited every morning, ready to work hard. But that's not reality. Even highly successful people experience doubt, fear, and resistance. The difference is that they act anyway. They don't wait for perfect emotions. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They take action despite how they feel. Goggins learned this lesson during some of the toughest periods of his life. There were days when his body was exhausted. Days when his mind begged him to quit. Days when every excuse sounded reasonable. But instead of giving up, he kept moving forward. Not because it was easy. Not because it felt good. But because he understood something powerful. Every time you push past a mental barrier, you become stronger. Every time you keep going when quitting feels easier, you expand your limits. Every time you face discomfort instead of avoiding it, you develop resilience. Resilience is one of the most valuable qualities a person can possess. Life will always present challenges. There will always be setbacks. There will always be moments when things don't go according to plan. Resilience allows you to continue anyway. The 40% rule reminds us that we are capable of much more than we realize. Most people never discover their true potential because they stop too soon. They never push beyond the point where growth begins. They never experience what happens when they continue despite fear, fatigue, and doubt. But the people who do discover something extraordinary. They discover that their limits were never as small as they believed. And once David Goggins understood this lesson, he began searching for ways to become stronger every single day. That journey led him to another powerful concept. A concept that would help him build an unbreakable mindset. A concept he calls callousing the mind. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that mental toughness is something you are born with. They look at strong people and assume they have always been confident, disciplined, and resilient. But David Goggins argues that mental toughness is not a gift. It is a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed through consistent practice. This is where the idea of callousing the mind comes from. Think about what happens when you repeatedly use your hands for hard work. Over time, your skin develops calluses. The skin becomes tougher because it adapts to stress. The same thing happens with the mind. Every time you do something difficult, your mind becomes a little stronger. Every time you face discomfort instead of avoiding it, you build resilience. Every time you keep going when you would rather quit, you increase your mental toughness. The problem is that most people spend their lives avoiding difficult situations. They choose comfort whenever possible. They avoid challenges. They avoid risks. They avoid failure. At first, this feels good. Comfort is easy. Comfort is familiar. Comfort is safe. But comfort comes with a hidden cost. The more comfortable your life becomes, the harder it becomes to handle adversity. When even small challenges feel overwhelming, it is usually because you have spent too much time avoiding discomfort. Goggins realized that if he wanted to become stronger, he had to intentionally do things that were difficult. Not because he enjoyed suffering. Not because he wanted to punish himself. But because he understood that growth requires resistance. Think about going to the gym. Muscles do not grow when they are comfortable. Muscles grow when they are challenged. The same principle applies to the mind. Mental strength grows through challenge. That is why Goggins began pushing himself beyond what felt comfortable. He exercised when he did not feel like exercising. He worked when he did not feel motivated. He stayed disciplined when nobody was watching. Each small victory strengthened his mindset. And over time, those victories began to compound. Most people underestimate the power of small daily actions. They believe success comes from massive breakthroughs. But more often than not, success comes from ordinary actions repeated consistently over time. Reading a few pages every day. Working on a skill every day. Improving by 1% every day. These small actions may seem insignificant, but they create extraordinary results in the long run. The challenge is that consistency is not exciting. People love dramatic transformations. They love overnight success stories. But they rarely see the years of discipline behind those stories. What separates successful people from everyone else is often their ability to keep going long after the excitement has disappeared. They continue when progress is slow. They continue when motivation fades. They continue when nobody is cheering for them. That is real mental toughness. Goggins believes that every day presents an opportunity to strengthen your mind. Maybe it is waking up earlier. Maybe it is exercising. Maybe it is learning a new skill. Maybe it is working on a goal instead of scrolling through social media. The specific challenge does not matter as much as the habit of challenging yourself. Because every time you choose discipline over comfort, you become stronger. Every time you choose growth over convenience, you become more resilient. Every time you do something difficult, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you thought. And confidence grows from that proof. Many people think confidence comes before action. They think they need to feel confident before they can take risks. But Goggins teaches the opposite. Action creates confidence. When you repeatedly do difficult things, you start trusting yourself. You stop wondering whether you are capable. You already know you are. That is why callousing the mind is so powerful. It is not about becoming fearless. It is about becoming stronger than your fears. It is about developing the ability to act even when you are uncomfortable. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is taking action despite fear. Most people spend years waiting for confidence before they start. They tell themselves that once they feel ready, they will finally begin working on their goals. But readiness is often an illusion. The people who achieve extraordinary things are usually not the people who feel the most confident in the beginning. They are the people who take action despite uncertainty. Every challenge you overcome sends a message to your brain. It tells your mind that you are stronger than you thought. It proves that discomfort is temporary and growth is possible. This is how mental toughness is built. Not in a single day. Not through one motivational speech. Not through one burst of inspiration. But through thousands of small decisions. Decisions to keep going. Decisions to stay disciplined. Decisions to do what is necessary even when it is difficult. Over time, those decisions transform who you are. You become more resilient, more disciplined, more confident, more capable. And eventually, the things that once felt impossible begin to feel normal. As Goggins continued pushing his limits, he discovered another powerful strategy for overcoming difficult moments. A strategy that helped him stay strong when challenges seemed impossible. A strategy he calls the cookie jar. And in the next chapter, you will learn how your past victories can become fuel for future success. After years of pushing himself through challenges, David Goggins discovered something important. The human mind has a tendency to forget its own strength. Whenever life becomes difficult, people often focus on their current problems and completely forget the obstacles they have already overcome. They remember their failures. They remember their mistakes. They remember their disappointments. But they forget their victories. And that is a dangerous habit because confidence is built from evidence. When you forget what you have accomplished, you start doubting what you are capable of accomplishing in the future. This realization led Goggins to create one of his most powerful mental tools. He called it the cookie jar. The idea is simple. Imagine a jar filled with every difficult challenge you have ever overcome. Every success. Every achievement. Every obstacle you survived. Every moment when you wanted to quit but kept going. Those memories become your cookies. And whenever life becomes difficult, you reach into that jar and remind yourself of what you have already conquered. Most people do the exact opposite. When they face a challenge, they immediately focus on everything that could go wrong. They focus on fear. They focus on uncertainty. They focus on failure. As a result, they feel weak before the battle even begins. Goggins learned to reverse this process. Whenever he faced a challenge that seemed impossible, he forced himself to remember previous victories. He reminded himself of difficult situations he had already survived. He remembered times when he felt exhausted but continued anyway. He remembered moments when success seemed impossible but eventually became reality. Those memories became proof. Proof that he was capable. Proof that he was resilient. Proof that he could handle more than his mind was telling him. Think about your own life. There have probably been moments when you faced challenges that felt overwhelming. Maybe it was a difficult exam. Maybe it was a financial struggle. Maybe it was a personal loss. Maybe it was a goal that seemed impossible at the time. Yet somehow you made it through. At the moment, you may not have believed you could. But you did. And that experience matters. Because every challenge you overcome becomes evidence of your strength. The problem is that most people never collect that evidence. They move from one challenge to the next without recognizing how much they have grown. They never stop to appreciate their own resilience. As a result, they continue seeing themselves as weak even when their past proves otherwise. The cookie jar changes that. It forces you to acknowledge your victories. Not to become arrogant. Not to become complacent. But to remind yourself of what you are capable of. Confidence does not come from positive thinking alone. Confidence comes from remembering what you have already achieved. Imagine two people facing the same challenge. The first person constantly focuses on failure. The second person remembers every obstacle they have already overcome. Who do you think will perform better? The answer is obvious. The person who remembers their victories enters the challenge with strength. The person who forgets them enters with doubt. Your memories influence your mindset. And your mindset influences your actions. That is why it is important to build your own cookie jar. Start collecting evidence. Write down your achievements. Remember difficult situations you survived. Remember goals you accomplished. Remember moments when you were stronger than you thought. Because one day you will need those memories. One day life will test you. One day a challenge will appear that makes you question yourself. And when that moment arrives, you will need proof that you are capable of continuing. That proof already exists. You just have to remember it. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that confidence comes from never struggling. In reality, confidence comes from surviving struggle. Every challenge you overcome becomes another cookie in the jar. Every victory becomes another reminder of your strength. Every setback you survive becomes another reason to believe in yourself. The strongest people are not people who have never failed. They are people who refuse to let failure define them. They learned from it. They grew from it. And they carried those lessons forward. Goggins believes that when life becomes difficult, you should not focus on how far you still have to go. Instead, focus on how far you have already come. Remember your progress. Remember your growth. Remember your victories. Because those memories can provide strength when motivation disappears. As Goggins continued building mental toughness, he discovered another powerful principle. A principle that allowed him to turn adversity into fuel. A principle that helped him outperform people who were more talented, more experienced, and more naturally gifted. He called this principle taking souls. And in the next chapter, you will learn how relentless effort can become one of the most powerful. As David Goggins continued pushing his limits, he noticed something interesting. In almost every competitive environment, people were obsessed with being better than everyone else. They wanted recognition. They wanted respect. They wanted to prove that they were the smartest, strongest, or most talented person in the room. But Goggins discovered a different approach. He realized that talent alone does not guarantee success. Intelligence alone does not guarantee success. Even motivation alone does not guarantee success. What often separates winners from everyone else is their willingness to suffer longer than the competition. This idea became one of his most powerful concepts. He called it taking souls. Despite the name, it has nothing to do with hurting other people. It is about breaking the expectations people place on you. It is about refusing to quit when everyone expects you to quit. It is about continuing to push forward when others believe you have reached your limit. Think about a difficult challenge. Maybe it is building a business. Maybe it is growing a YouTube channel. Maybe it is learning a new skill. At the beginning, many people are excited. They are motivated. They are optimistic. But after a few weeks, reality appears. Progress becomes slower. Results become harder to achieve. Obstacles begin to appear. That is where most people stop. Not because they are incapable, but because they are unwilling to continue when things become difficult. Goggins understood that persistence is a superpower. If you can continue when everyone else quits, your chances of success increase dramatically. Imagine two people with equal talent. The first person works hard for 1 month and then gives up. The second person continues working for 3 years. Who is more likely to succeed? The answer is obvious. Consistency beats intensity. Long-term effort beats short-term motivation. And discipline beats talent when talent refuses to work. This is why Goggins became obsessed with doing more than what was expected. If people expected him to stop, he kept going. If people doubted him, he worked harder. If circumstances became difficult, he viewed that difficulty as an opportunity. Most people see obstacles as signs to quit. Goggins saw obstacles as opportunities to grow stronger. That mindset changed everything. Because the moment you stop seeing challenges as enemies, they become teachers. Every setback teaches patience. Every failure teaches improvement. Every obstacle teaches resilience. And every difficult experience becomes a chance to develop character. One reason people struggle with adversity is because they take it personally. When something goes wrong, they immediately assume they are not good enough. When they fail, they assume they are incapable. When they face rejection, they assume they should quit. But failure is not a judgment of your worth. Failure is feedback. Failure shows you where improvement is needed. Failure teaches lessons that success often cannot teach. The people who achieve extraordinary things are not people who avoid failure. They are people who learn from failure and continue moving forward. Goggins often found himself surrounded by people who were naturally more talented than he was. Some were stronger. Some were smarter. Some had better opportunities. But he discovered that relentless effort could close many of those gaps. Because talent matters. But effort multiplies talent. Knowledge matters. But discipline multiplies knowledge. Potential matters. But action turns potential into reality. Most people spend their lives talking about what they could do. Very few people spend their lives doing it. The difference is action. The difference is execution. The difference is persistence. Every day you have a choice. You can follow your feelings. Or you can follow your goals. Your feelings will often tell you to stop. Your goals will tell you to continue. The people who achieve greatness learn how to prioritize goals over temporary emotions. They understand that emotions change. Motivation changes. Circumstances change. But commitment remains. And commitment creates results. Taking souls is ultimately about becoming the kind of person who refuses to be defined by limitations. It is about proving to yourself that you are capable of more. It is about maintaining your standards even when life becomes difficult. It is about showing yourself that discipline is stronger than excuses. The greatest competition is not with other people. The greatest competition is with the weaker version of yourself. The version that wants to quit. The version that wants comfort. The version that wants easy solutions. Every day you have an opportunity to defeat that version. And every time you do, you become stronger. As Goggins continued his journey, he realized something that changed his perspective forever. Success is not a destination. Growth is not a destination. There is no final level where challenges disappear. There is always another mountain to climb. Another lesson to learn. Another limit to break. This realization led him to one final principle. A principle that defines the entire message of the book. A principle called never finished. As David Goggins continued pushing himself beyond what most people considered possible, he came to a realization that changed the way he viewed success forever. Most people treat success like a finish line. They believe that once they achieve a goal, everything will finally be easy. They think that once they make enough money, get in shape, build a successful career, or accomplish a major dream, they will finally feel complete. But reality does not work that way. Every new level creates new challenges. Every achievement creates new responsibilities. Every victory opens the door to another test. This is why Goggins says one of the most important lessons in life is understanding that you are never finished. Growth never ends. Learning never ends. Self-improvement never ends. The moment you think you have arrived is often the moment you begin falling behind. Many people spend years chasing a goal. They tell themselves that happiness exists on the other side of achievement. Then they finally reach that goal. And for a brief moment, they feel excited. But eventually the excitement fades. A new challenge appears. A new goal emerges. And they realize something surprising. The destination was never the point. The journey was. The person they became during the process mattered more than the achievement itself. Goggins learned that life is not about reaching a final destination. It is about constantly becoming a better version of yourself. This mindset is powerful because it removes limitations. When you understand that growth never ends, failure becomes less frightening. Mistakes become lessons. Setbacks become opportunities. Challenges become part of the process. Instead of asking whether you will fail, you start asking what failure can teach you. Instead of fearing discomfort, you begin using it as a tool for growth. This shift changes everything. Most people stop growing because they become comfortable. They achieve a small amount of success and decide that is enough. They stop learning. They stop challenging themselves. They stop improving. Over time, they begin moving backward without realizing it. Because in life, standing still is often impossible. You are either growing or declining. You are either improving or becoming complacent. That is why Goggins constantly searched for new challenges. Not because he needed to prove something to other people, but because he understood that growth requires continuous effort. The strongest people are not those who never struggle. The strongest people are those who continue growing despite struggle. They understand that there is always another level to reach. Another skill to learn. Another weakness to improve. Another fear to overcome. This mindset creates freedom. Because when growth becomes the goal, you stop obsessing over perfection. You stop expecting instant results. You stop judging yourself based on temporary setbacks. Instead, you focus on progress. And progress is always available. Even on difficult days. Even when things do not go according to plan. Even when success feels far away. You can always take one step forward. That step may be small. But small steps repeated consistently create extraordinary outcomes. One of the greatest dangers in life is believing that you have reached your limit. The truth is that human potential is difficult to measure. Most people never discover what they are capable of because they stop too soon. They quit at the first obstacle. They retreat at the first sign of discomfort. They accept limitations that may not even be real. Goggins challenges this way of thinking. He encourages people to question their limits. To test their assumptions. To push beyond what feels comfortable. Because extraordinary growth often exists just beyond the point where most people stop. This does not mean you must become an ultramarathon runner. It does not mean you must become a Navy SEAL. The lesson is much deeper than that. The lesson is that you are capable of more than you think. More discipline. More resilience. More courage. More persistence. More growth. The only way to discover that potential is through action. Not through wishing. Not through waiting. Not through hoping. Through action. Every day gives you an opportunity to become stronger. Every challenge gives you an opportunity to grow. Every setback gives you an opportunity to learn. And every decision gives you an opportunity to become the person you want to be. That is the true message of Can't Hurt Me. It is not a book about becoming perfect. It is not a book about avoiding pain. It is not a book about living an easy life. It is a book about embracing responsibility. Embracing discomfort. Embracing growth. And refusing to let your circumstance define your future. Because no matter where you start, no matter what mistakes you have made, and no matter how difficult your journey has been, your story is not finished. You are not finished. Your growth is not finished. Your potential is not finished. The next chapter of your life is still being written. And the choices you make today will determine what that chapter becomes. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. If there is one lesson to take away from this book, it is that your mind will often create limits long before you reach your true potential. The voice that tells you to quit, slow down, or settle for less is not always telling the truth. Growth begins when you choose discipline over excuses, action over fear, and progress over comfort. Remember the lessons from this book. Face the truth through accountability. Push beyond your perceived limits with the 40% rule. Build mental toughness by embracing challenges. Use your past victories as fuel through the cookie jar. And never stop growing, because the journey of self-improvement is never finished. The person you become is shaped by the choices you make every day. Small actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time they create extraordinary results. So ask yourself this question. What is one difficult thing you have been avoiding that could change your life if you started today? Whatever it is, take the first step. Because your future is built by what you do now, not by what you plan to do someday. If you enjoyed this summary, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss future book summaries designed to help you grow, learn, and become the best version of yourself. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are capable of far more than you think. See you in the next summary.